And we're live. Good evening, everybody. When you jump in the chat, let me know how everything is on audio and video. Look at 6 people. 6 people in here just ready to pounce. Give me a holler in the chat if everything is sounding right, because things might not look good. All right? I understand what I'm dealing with over here. I'm feeling a little smooth jazzy this evening with the voice. We'll see how it goes. Pop in the chat and let me know if we're good on the audio and all that. And September and June, now is not your time to tell me that there's something wrong with the audio. I'm going to try to look at it myself. Okay. Yep, that's the right one. Is it buzzing? Oh, it's spoonding. It's not buzzy. You're making me check my connections. Troy, good on ya. Okay? Man. Between the two of you, not you, Troy. Welcome to the November 2024 live stream Q&A podcast. It's the Thanksgiving edition of the podcast. Count your blessings. Thank your people. It's going to be turkey time soon, folks. Welcome to the Adam Makes Beer podcast and YouTube channel. Check out Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and see all the long-form brewer interviews we've done. After you subscribe, please leave a review and comment as well, because it really helps support the work I am doing. Also, if you are new to the channel or podcast, go to Adam Makes Beer on YouTube, click the playlist tab, and see tons of info. Brew days, technique videos, tutorials, over 894 videos as of right now. Creeping up on 900. Gonna get to 1,000. As always, if you're getting value out of this content, please follow, rate, like, comment, and share with your brewing friends and craft beer enthusiast homies. And if you have the means and feel as if my content has benefited you, consider a channel membership for $2.99 a month. This gives you priority for Q&A live stream questions. And yeah, and shout out to all my VIP folks out there. It's very much appreciated. Just quick reminder that and well, actually, we'll get into that in just a second. But you know what we need to get into right now? We're going to get into talking about my boy, David Lentz. Brewed fiscally is something that you need in your life. Are you a brewery? Are you planning to be a brewery and don't know what you're doing with the financials? I've got your man. Check out my boy David Lentz at Brewed Fiscally. This man has what you need on the financial side: bookkeeping, fractional CFO support, financial management system design, business plan review. Hit up your boy. Go to brewedfiscally.com or email david@brewedfiscally.com. He's good people. Now more than ever, you got to have those dollars and cents right and tight. Get in there and talk to my man, David. He can hook you up. I'm going to talk a little bit more about David here shortly. But speaking of good people, starting a brewery is a big step. That's why Blickman Engineering is here to support you along the way. Since 2006, they have helped hundreds of breweries succeed with nano brewery tailored equipment, including the new 3.5 barrel Pro Surface electric brewing system. This new innovative brew house reduces maintenance and saves brewers at least 30 minutes every brew day, as the heating elements are mounted under the kettle and host over 20,000 watts of power in both 2-vessel and 3-vessel configurations. Their competitively priced equipment lets you start fresh, offering a full suite of brew houses from 1 to 15 barrel, matching cellaring equipment, keg washers, grain mills, and accessories specifically for the nano brewer. Ready to go pro or just exploring the options? Contact Phil or Tom at proseries@blickmanengineering.com. Again, that's proseries@blickmanengineering.com. My friends at Blickman can get you up and running quickly for a faster ROI. The chat's popping, ladies and gentlemen. The chat's popping. You know, we've got Spoonding, we've got Troy, we've got Pascal. Well, welcome, Pascal. I don't know if I've seen you before. Let's see. I am Turkey Time, Spoonding. Hugh's in the house. I'm going to consider a channel member. Oh, you dirty dog. Hugh, bro, you know, I mean, do your thing. Cowboy Brewer. David is a champ. Highly recommended. Cowboy, you don't have to say in the chat. I hopefully you interesting. I don't know if you've hit him up or not. It sounds like you have. Good. I'm gonna have to hit up Davey, man, and see what's happening. Don't let the red hair fool you. You know what I mean? He's a good guy. You know, he's a good guy. That's fantastic. And Hugh's great too. And Lil Barn, what's good? What? Hugh, you're a good man. You're a good man. And David is a champ. Take it from Cowboy Brewer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's fall. It's been raining. We've gotten more rain in the past few days here than I think we did all summer. We're in a drought this summer, and we're finally having the earth remoisturized in the greater Cincinnati area. I chopped down a tree the other day because I'm a grown man. And then today I just started, cutting it up with a chainsaw again because I'm a grown man. So that was pretty cool. I'm going to have to split some wood later. You know what I mean? Later this week, maybe this weekend, just get out there and just split some wood, dude. Maybe this is going to turn into one of those wood chopping YouTube channels, where there's like a man half my age and twice my size with half my body fat, chopping pieces of wood in half. I don't know if it would go over as well with me. I understand that there's an audience that likes to watch things like that. I don't know if you would want to see my body performing those tasks. Anyways, September, do you feel as if there's something a little velvety with the voice tonight? I felt like that as soon as I stepped on the mic. Sometimes you didn't even know what was happening. My award-winning dunkel is what good in my glass, Little Barn Brewer with that award-winning dunkel. I'll tell you what, right now, dunkel, one of my favorite beer styles. Don't kid yourself. Ladies and gents, let's get into the November Career Corner. I don't know if I've had the mug in the I don't know if I've had the mug in here for recently. You know what I mean? But I'm bringing it back today. I've been drinking more coffee than I probably should. More than I used to, maybe. But anyways, November Career Corner, baby. I am still job searching / looking for a job that's a good fit. I have moved up the ladder during my time in the brewing industry. And so even though sometimes there are jobs in the brewing world, sometimes you can only afford so much of a pay cut. You know what I mean? And so, I'm looking for the right fit on that front, in which I do so diligently. But in the meantime, I am going full on with content creation with Adam Makes Beer, and we have some cool stuff coming up. My goal is, if anybody out there is going to be at the Ohio Craft Brewers Association conference in the end of January, hit me up. because I'm going to be there and I'm going to have a table with my man, David Lentz, Brewed Fiscally. We're going to have a table. We're going to have a booth. There's going to be beer pouring all around us. So it's going to be a hot spot, baby. You get over there. You come talk to me about Adam Makes Beer stuff. You go talk to David about those financials. But what I'm going to be doing is, you may have seen, if you've been following me on Instagram or Facebook or what have you, or maybe even on TikTok. There's nothing on there on it yet, though. But I am doing, I'm starting to do some in-brewery content with breweries, which is pretty exciting. This coming Wednesday, I'm going to be at Warped Wing. John Haggerty, shout out Michigan. Shout out Old School New Holland for all those OG Michigan boys and girls in the chat and out there over the airwaves. I remember talking to John Haggerty when I was nerding out as a home brewer and be like, I heard him give a talk on water or something. I'm like, hey guys, so yeah, anyways, I just really want to get good at brewing. Nice guy. It's half calf September. It's half calf, baby. So I'm going to be brewing up there with Warped Wing. The cool thing about that situation is, from a brewer standpoint, it's kind of like a super brewery tour type concept. But also we're going to be digging in on their brew day. We're going to be able to check out equipment, see different layouts. I think the big idea behind bringing content like this to you is, I always thought that idea of saying, well, okay, well, I'm an experienced, Italian chef, right? What if I could go and spend a month in a French kitchen and work there? And just the amount of information you would be able to absorb and learn, different things like that, getting into somebody else's kitchen and working with them. I want to help bring that experience to all of my brewing people on the Adam Makes Beer Network. You know what I mean? And I want you to see how different people are doing it, how different people are, solving different problems with the layout of their place, things like that. So I'm excited to get in there. I'm super grateful to John and everybody at Warped Wing for being the first brewery to say, hey, yeah, let's record some in-brewery content. So I'm going to be doing that next Wednesday. Probably we're probably looking at maybe after Thanksgiving, having that. I don't know if it's going to be one large video or a series coming out there, but it's going to be really good to be in a brewery doing in-brewery content again. I'm ready to do it. It's been too long, and I think it's stuff that really brings value to a lot of folks that watch the channel. So that's cool. But I was talking about David and I having a booth at the OCBA conference. I'm basically rolling out a couple of things here. I'm going to be looking for people to partner up with for doing in-brewery content. I have some more exciting stuff that I probably can't announce just yet, but I think I'm going to have some really cool stuff on that side. If you are attached to a brewery, own a brewery, and you want to have me come out and do a brew day with you, we can do that. If it's close enough, I can drive there and do the thing, right? If it's far enough away to where it might take some expense on travel or staying overnight somewhere, I might need help with that, because right now I'm not bringing in enough money to be able to cover that myself. But if that's something that you're interested in, it's something we can totally do. So I am kind of rolling out this content creation thing, but I'm also, I haven't put it all together yet, but I think there's a misconception for a lot of brewers that are coming up, that are growing in our field. You might be on the pro side, but you're newer. And sometimes you think, hey, listen, if I go to CBC, I'm going to learn a ton and I'm going to get to be a lot better in the brewery. You can go to CBC and that's great. But I think there's tremendous value if you are in a situation like that. If you're in a situation where you're not sure about your SOPs, your standard operating procedures. You're not certain about how you should be working in the most efficient way with your equipment. You can bring me in and I can do kind of an SOP audit for you, with you. I can work with you to make sure that all your SOPs are where they need to be. I can actually formalize them for you. I can create training videos for you that you can, I will make for you. You can have on hand. There's a wide range of things that we can do. I can do things that will definitely help on the quality side in your brewery. And I can also help on the purchasing procurement side and making sure that you are being as efficient as possible on that side. Because even though making the beer is relatively inexpensive, any money that you can save and still make the best quality beer you can is definitely going to help the bottom line of your brewery. So I'm going to have a big rundown on stuff like that, but I am diving headlong into the content creation, consultation side of things. And I'll be honest, things have been up and down personally. I know things have been going really well. But I've always been somebody that struggles with anxiety and depression a little bit. And it's not like a scary situation or anything like that. It's nothing, because, I know sometimes people think the worst about something like that, but sometimes it's just a day-to-day thing. And so I've had my ups and downs, but I'll tell you, I'm really, really excited about putting my full energy behind this channel and content creation and seeing what I can do here, working for myself and with other people on something that I'm very passionate about. I'm passionate about helping other people get better at what they're doing. I'm passionate about people being successful in their businesses, and I'm passionate about passing along information that I've picked up over the years. So in some ways, it's super exciting. It's super, super exciting. And there's some ways that it's a little spooky too, but I'm ready, man. I just got another camera. I got a GoPro today, so I'll have 2 cameras now that I can record when I'm going to visit people's breweries. Really excited about it. But I will say this: it would be extra helpful if you think about it. That $2.99 channel membership. It's less than a cup of coffee a month. And if you have the scratch on you, if you have the means, I would love for you to sign up for that channel membership. I will try to work on maybe some membership benefits or something like that. Hopefully you have been seeing the recipe writing workshop that is rolling out. It's just going to get better and better. The response on it has been fantastic, and I appreciate all the support. Please share those videos with your homebrew clubs on Reddit. I don't even know if there's message boards other than Reddit. But get the word out on that stuff. It would really, really help me out. Speaking of which, Brookside Brewing, new channel member. Bless your heart. Bless your heart. So yeah, that's what Davey and I were going to have an OCBA table. So if you're going to that conference, make sure to say what's good. Okay, come see me. And I've had people say before, when they see me at conferences, they don't know if they should come up and say hi. I'm talking to other people or whatever. Dude, just come up and say hi. I mean, it's really not a big deal. If you've ever had somebody, like, I don't know, it's flattering. It's always flattering to have people come up and say, hey, and I do want to attach names to faces. So I think that would be awesome. Please do. Please do. Please do. What else? I had a whole thing typed up, but I was just ranting over it. I'm now offering my services as a coach and consultant. I can come in and do full process audits and help create formal SOPs to drive quality, efficiency, and profitability in your processes. I can also help with leadership development. That sounded probably better than what I said before, but you know what I mean. Hey, listen, this was a question that I forgot the first time last time. Here's part of the show, people. If you got those cues, drop them in the chat, okay? If you don't, sit back and enjoy, baby. Sit back and enjoy. First question is from Nat, and I forgot to include Nat's question the last time for the last one, but I'll tell you what, Nat, you're getting the cream of the crop today. Okay. I sat down and I thought about this and I typed stuff up. All right. So if you're disappointed in my answer, it was my best effort. So you just know I'm a bad student at this point because I tried on this one. So we'll see how it goes. I'd love to ask for any tips about life after an apprenticeship. My apprenticeship is going to be ending next year, and I learned a lot from my head brewer. So stepping out and being independent can be quite daunting. I do get a certification, and it's about 2 years long. I should still have a job afterwards, but you never know what opportunities come up, things like that. Maybe long-term career-wise, I would like to have my own pub. So Nat is somebody that we know each other from Instagram. And she's new in the industry. And she's working through her apprenticeship and wanted to hit me up on this stuff. So Nat, here's my take. And especially through the lens of new professional in the workplace, in the brewery space. Okay. This would be my same advice to anybody. And this isn't me like being like ageist or looking down on the fact that you're younger in the industry. That's great. But yeah, this is my big picture look on that. Step one of the most important things. I think these are all important things, but this is the first one I started with. In the workplace and in life, but in the workplace, be honest, work hard, be grateful, and pursue personal growth. And when I'm talking about personal growth, I mean specifically getting better at, because a lot of us need to, getting better at personal responsibility, humility, forgiveness, generosity, and temperance. There's other virtues that go in there, but those are all good things for us to be looking to grow in, right? We have to put ourselves in difficult situations, and oftentimes difficult situations will find us, and we will have our mettle tested, right? But don't just seek comfort. Seek things that are challenging and that help put you in a situation to grow. The next thing I would suggest is become an independent learner. As far as brewing science goes, there's a range of different podcasts out there available. Dig into the podcast scene. Sometimes when you're working and you're just doing the monotonous stuff, podcast it up. You know what I mean? On your commute, podcast it up. At the gym, podcast it up. Podcast, and then same goes with reading and or audiobooks. Really you can become self-taught. I learned how to brew by listening to podcasts. No, I do it for a living. All right. That's how that goes. This is the day and age that we're living in. And I would also look at if you have access to things like the Master Brewers Association's Technical Quarterly or any other version of scholarly articles that are available, dig in on that. I would say primarily don't try to push yourself through stuff that you might be super bored with. Try to chase some things that you're passionate about from a content standpoint, and that'll help build that momentum with all of that. The next thing that I would suggest is doing a deep dive on restaurant operations. You can do that with podcasts, books, etc. I'm a huge fan of the podcast called Restaurants Unstoppable, and you should start checking it out. They interview independent business owners, and they talk about the ins and outs of running a restaurant. Even if it's just going to be serving beer, we are running restaurants when we're trying to run a pub, whether there's food or not. But start looking at it through that lens. From a hospitality restaurant ownership standpoint, I really love the book Setting the Table by Danny Myers. Tremendous book. And I think it'll help create a good mindset for some of the intangible things about running a profitable restaurant. There's definitely nuts and bolts financial side as well. But I would also be an active, be an active observer when you're going out and about. Okay. When you go into pubs that you love, when you go into pubs that are busy and killing it, keep your eyes open. Why is this place busy? Why do I love walking in here? Right? Start taking mental notes of things like that. Talk to some of those people, talk to those bartenders, talk to that GM. Start piecing that together, kind of have a broader view. And sometimes that can just be, you having a conversation when you're out, right? Next, make wise choices about how you treat your body, mind, and spirit. Rough industry. And it can chew you up. It can chew you up. You got to make smart choices about how we live day to day, how we're eating, how we're exercising, the water we're drinking, how we're taking care of ourselves spiritually. All those things are very important. All those things are very important. Take good care of yourself. And the last one that I will suggest that kind of set this path forward for you as you grow as a brewing professional. The last one I would suggest is start thinking about the idea of or set the goal of understanding the difference between friends and drinking buddies. I think the world is full of drinking buddies. And I think sometimes we make the mistake of trusting and relying on people that are maybe acquaintances as opposed to people that are actual friends. Maybe the difference between real friend and associate, or what was I calling them? Yeah. A friend is somebody that is celebrates with you when you do well, that encourages you when you're struggling, and they call you to be something better when you're not. All right. So yeah, hopefully that's not my too preachy answer on it. But those are my big picture, and there's kind of bullet point things, right? And I know nothing is like super concrete, but like become active, take advantage. Especially the point that you're at in your career right now, you're never going to be younger, have more energy, and have your body bounce back from the difficult things about this industry. Okay, capitalize on it. I know you feel tired and beat up at the end of a shift, but you got more in you than you think you do. Again, take good care of yourself, but learn, grow, keep your eyes open, right? And the other thing, one other quick thing, don't be the person that talks shit, all right? Don't have an opinion about other people. When people start gossiping about other people, I don't know, sit it out, sit that one out. I don't know. Restaurant industry can be funny like that. I remember back in this one place I used to work at, the GM, she and I got along real well. And she always knew that I wouldn't talk about other people. And so sometimes she would try to stir the pot a little bit with me and ask me to like dip in with my thoughts on this, that, or the other thing. And I would just never do it. It would drive her crazy. But I always told her the reason I don't do this is because someday somebody's going to tell you I did or said something. And you're going to know I didn't do it or I didn't say it because of the way I carry myself between you and I, right? You know I don't do that stuff. So anyways, it makes life a little simpler. But Nat, appreciate the follow, appreciate the question, and best of luck to you. Next question is from Riv Rivera on YouTube. Adam, how about that residual sweetness in hazies? How do they do that? I've heard they use maltodextrin. Others use lactose. I don't want to use either. I agree with you. Is there something different? All right. So first of all, let's dip in on this. There are a few ways to approach residual sweetness in beers. One is an actual higher finishing gravity. So having more residual sweetness in the beer. Okay. So actually doing exactly what we're talking about doing. Sometimes you can do that with crystal malt. But the problem is with hazy, with crystal malt, unless you're going really, really pale, and that will, those crystal malts will push up the residual sweetness. You can start building color in those and maybe start getting a little bit of a weird color out of them because those hazy beers, I don't know, they can get a little wonky looking in a hurry if you're too dark on the SRM on the color scale with them. So I would encourage you to really look at pushing up your mash temperature. Now, there's some areas where people get nervous. Higher mash temp will push you further into the alpha amylase enzyme range for that mash, and it will definitely create longer chain sugars that will not be readily fermented by your standard beer yeast, and they can add sweetness as well. Sometimes we get nervous on the high 150 Fs, close to 70 C, because we're like, oh, we're going to denature all of our enzyme. And that can be true. The further you go up that temperature range for them, you can start knocking them out. And I've really had a hard time. I've gone up to like 156 and I was kind of sticking there, and I'm like, man, I'm really not pushing up my finishing gravity on some of these hazies. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going for it. I'm going and then the one time I just slammed it up to 159 or 70-ish C. And all of a sudden I got a much bigger residual sweetness on the backside, and it was much rounder. And I felt like it was a really big step forward in the juiciness. So dig this. If you pull up your chart that shows the range of both where alpha amylase and beta amylase enzymes are cleaving starches into sugar. When you go further up on the warmer side of it, those I'm sorry, my brain's being a little weird right now. Sometimes you can get scared when you start getting into that high 150s into the close 70 C. But here's the deal. At 158 F or 70 C, you're still getting 100% of your alpha amylase rocking and doing its thing. You can push higher. If you go up to 162 F or 72 C, you still have, you're still rocking at 80% of what that alpha amylase can be doing. If you want to be slow with your ramp up on this, that's fine. I get being nervous about wanting to go too high and feeling like you're going to denature all your enzymes. But I'll tell you, that was one of the big boosts for me, is when I really pushed that mash temperature up, and I got that finishing gravity up, and I feel like it really, really helped. A couple other nuts and bolts things that you could also be doing. You can also be dropping bitterness levels. But I have a feeling your beers probably aren't too bitter when you're doing hazy. And you can also try to influence the perception of that, which you can, of course, do through heavy use of chloride, which is pretty typical, standard for the style, or a flaked adjunct, whether that be flaked oats or flaked rye. You can really try to stack up your intense fruit flavors, because remember, when you are stacking up really intense flavors and aromas that imply sweetness. Sometimes it can actually translate into your perception of sweetness on that beer. But let's get into the sugar maltodextrin thing that you were talking about. Some people do use lactose in them, and they obviously list it. I know Scott Janish has used maltodextrin in some of his, and he'll even add them like post ferment cold side, if I'm remembering correctly. And I'm sure that's like boiling that in water, cooling it down, degassing it, whatever, and then pushing it into a tank and mixing it. Me personally, I've never had a ton of success with maltodextrin in that way. And maybe I need to fuss with it more. I used to do like a kind of a hazy pale back at Cartridge, and I would try to be pretty aggressive with the bitterness, but I still wanted the body. I didn't want trying to balance that, firmly bitter beer, but a beer that's also dry and not having it get too much. And so there was times where I played with some maltodextrin in that recipe, and it would bump my final gravity up, 5 to 6 points or 1 to 1.5 Plato. But I would see the number, but I still didn't see it in the beer. I didn't perceive it in the beer. It could be me. Maybe I needed to go bigger after it. But I get not wanting to use sugar. But Riv, my guess is really start pushing the upper range of your mash range or your comfortability with that, and see where that gets you. And hopefully you start seeing what you want out of that finished beer. Cheers, man. Next question comes from Jason Saniak on YouTube. All right. What helps you know how often your water profiles shift? Is it seasonal, rain dependent, and our frequency, something else? Love the content. Gonna have to listen to this another time or two to absorb more of the essentials. Jay is referencing the recipe writing workshop. If you haven't checked it out, it's rolling out right now. I have 2 parts out. I have a third that I'm more than likely going to be recording tomorrow. So check it out. Like, comment, share. Let me know as we're going stuff that if you feel like I'm missing something, and we'll this course is a living document, baby. I'm just opening up, sharing you everything, sharing with you everything that I know about recipe creation, however limited it might be. But I had talked about potentially getting your water profile checked multiple times throughout the year because of seasonal shift. And it depends. There are times, the reason that I say that there can be shift is there will be times when different municipalities are pulling water from different sources. Okay. And I've heard some people swear that, like you mentioned, with drought, with rain, that they got different, they had different things coming through on their water tests. But yeah, that's why. When I was at Sonder, it was interesting because it's just a handful of miles from Cartridge, but their water is night and day different than what I was dealing with at Cartridge. Cartridge water was wild and wanted to scale like a mug. But Sonder has really nice stable water, and it's because they're near Procter and Gamble, and P&G has pretty specific water specs that the municipality works with because they carry weight, boy. They employ a lot of people. But other areas have more variable water sources. So yeah, that's exactly why you can be pulling from different sources. And even if you're somebody that's like on a well or whatnot, and there might be a well guy out there, a well girl out there, and they're like, what he's about to say is stupid. But I remember when I used to work on the fish farm, son. Bet you know I worked on a fish farm raising trout. Adam, how did you do it? You plant egg, the fish egg, in the ground and keep it really, really wet. And then next thing you know, trout, baby. Okay. But I was stocking rivers. I was stocking ponds, trout, boy. That's what I did for a while for $4 an hour cash. Don't tell the government. What was I talking about? Oh, that fish farm, it was fed by an artesian well. Came up out of the ground, burbling out of the ground. And we would have, after storms, it would run muddy. It was crazy. It would be different even after, like, you know, natural weather events. Okay. So yeah, things can switch up. Things can be different. So that's why, Jay, when I was talking about that stuff. So it might be worthwhile shooting an email to your local municipality and seeing if they do shift seasonally, when they tend to do that. And if it's of key importance to you, I would look at getting that water tested every time, not trusting the average report that they will send you. I think you should actually be testing it off your own stuff. But I appreciate the question. Let's see here. Hey, some guy in the chat. I'm going to need you to give me, I want to make sure I'm on the right page. Some guy. Hey, Adam, or chat. Think I just found a persistent off flavor cause in my brews. There was gunk behind my ball valves, so I have been cracking my ball valves open every brew. Is this something you do? So like on the brew house, like where the you know, like for your whirlpool arm, different thing. Is that what you're talking about? Is this unnecessary with butterfly valves? Or maybe it's unnecessary with ball valves, but I think this was the cause of my off flavor. Just to wrap up real quick with Jay, who's in the chat, it seems that it would be easier to RO the water and rebuild it manually with salts, but thanks for the answer. You know, honestly, so, you know, if you're brewing at home, you can afford to use RO all day and you can build it up however you want. I do know professional size places that are building their water, stripping down to RO, and then building back up from there. At the same time, I mean, it's not, I mean, we're talking about the very, very, very fine points, right? Maybe some people wouldn't even notice in the beer, but yeah, you know, we're trying to chase down everything. So yeah. And some guy continues with hose connects and stuff like my pumps, etc. Yeah, I mean, some guy. My guess is, you know, if we're talking about an off flavor in your beer and you're thinking that could potentially be behind some of the butterfly valves, I think you can definitely do a breakdown on those. All those things, all those work paths and different things should be getting CIP'd with regularity. And so it should be taken care of. I do know a lot of times with systems that just don't get touched, never get broken down and inspected, you can have an issue start to snowball. So yeah, I mean, if you're able to be running CIP on all the things that you're talking about, I don't think that should be the issue. Yeah. hose connects and stuff like my pumps, etc. Yeah, man, I would think that, really tight, appropriate CIPs would be taking care of something like that. I could be wrong, but maybe if it's a persistent thing, yeah, maybe there's something wonky in the heat X. I don't know how long it's been since you've had something going on in your heat X side. If you're repitching yeast, you know, I would definitely revisit those chemical concentrations that you're using for sanitizing and everything like that. So, yeah. Appreciate the question though, man. Sorry, I feel like I'm not being a ton of help to you, but that's just where my head is at, some guy. Down South Trout Mouth on YouTube. First time I'm getting that, getting one from down south, Trout Mouth. By degas, do you mean getting the CO2 out? Does this affect pH? This is during one of the last live streams where I was talking about degassing a beer and taking a pH reading on it. So this is one that I did some prep for. So check this out. Yes, you can degas by utilizing a stir plate. Sometimes people put it on a stir plate, or pouring the beer from vessel to vessel 30 to 40 times. That's what we did at Sonder. All right. And yes, degassing a beer or removing its carbonation can slightly raise the pH. This is because carbon dioxide dissolved in beer forms carbonic acid, which contributes to the beer's acidity. When CO2 is removed, the concentration of carbonic acid decreases, leading to a minor increase in pH. The exact change in pH is generally small, usually in the range of 0.1 to 0.3 pH units. And that's going to depend on factors such as the beer's initial carb level, the specific composition of the beer, and its buffering capacity, meaning how much it would resist pH change. So like, for example, a typical pale lager might have a pH of around 4.2 to 4.4 when carbonated, but after degassing, it might be closer to 4.3 to 4.5. Beers with higher carbonation levels, like certain Belgian styles, might experience a slightly more noticeable pH shift, closer to 0.3 pH units, again, because there's more in there. I'm referencing Kuhn's and Bamforth for this stuff. So yeah. That's what I'm talking about there, man. So yeah, that's why you degas, because it can't actually play that role. Looking back at some guy again. Like I removed the ball and the ball housing had filth behind it. I would run boiling water through it, but thought the filth would lead to some. Yeah, thanks, man. Last batch was clean. Yeah, that's good. And I mean, so we're talking. So it's ball valves, not butterfly valves. Yeah, I don't know. Butterfly. Yeah, butterfly is obviously. I shouldn't say that. Butterfly is preferable to ball valve in that way, right? Yeah. And Jay has some good advice in here too. He said I found some about astounding stuff in my ball valves one time. Don't trust anything. It's true. It's true. Don't trust anything. I've been watching Castle with my wife. Okay. Do you like mysteries? Do you like drama? Do you like the greatest love story since Romeo and Juliet? Do you love dashing, hilarious rapscallions of a lead male? Thank you, Nathan Fillion. What about the beautiful, smart, intelligent, fierce, unflappable Kate Beckett? Also, if you haven't watched Firefly, yeah, but Peg and I, my wife and I, we've been watching Castle. Okay, we've been watching Castle. I don't know why that came up right there, but it did. Castle's pretty good. Castle's pretty good. And listen, if you're gonna jump in the chat right now and give me some heat about Castle, you can save it because I love it. Next question comes from Bandana Bush on YouTube. Thanks for running this channel. You're welcome. I've been watching off and on for a while now. I'm currently the lead cellarman in a 30,000 barrel a year brewery, and I'm leaving to be the brewer of a 300 barrel brewery, 300 barrels a year, 3-barrel system. Can you make a video with tips on how to obtain maximum yield out of the fermenter? Yeah. And this is it, man. And this is it. Bandana Bush. I don't know how I feel about that name, but we'll roll with it. Few things. So first, off the top, remember most fermenters have 15 to 20% headspace. So if you have a 5-barrel tank, 3-barrel tank, you expect to have 15 to 20% more headspace in there. Now, you don't want to fill it until it's coming out of the top. All right. But keep that in mind. If you have a CIP arm coming off the top of your tank, and that alone, that spray ball is hanging down into that headspace, and you're not going to be filling right up to the top. So it can come down like that. But if you have a vent arm, sometimes that vent, you have a second arm, the vent arm, sometimes that's further up in the dome, and you actually have more headspace to work with right there. Or you actually have the full headspace to work with. Those are just a couple of things to think about. First of all, the first way to be maximizing your yield out of your fermenter. There might be some things I forgot, but I think these are pretty good. And listen to my words. Get the maximum volume of boiling wort into your kettle as possible safely. Not get as much wort into your kettle as possible, but boiling wort into your kettle safely. There's that horrendous episode that they seem to post a handful of times a year for Master Brewers Association podcast, where it was just like called Screaming or something like that. I don't know. I'm not belittling anything. This woman got burned and it was terrible. You don't need to listen to that podcast more than once. It's one of the worst injuries you can get in our field. But make sure that you are getting as much wort as you can into your vessel and you are able to boil it safely. There are boil aids that can keep foam down. The kettle that we worked with at Sonder had a boil over sensor. Fancy. But not very few people have that. So sometimes you can use a defoamer, use as little as possible. That's just my personal opinion as far as things like that go. But yes, so do try to get as much wort as possible into that kettle safely. Next, I would use higher alpha hops, flowable hop products on the hot side and cold side, all in an aim to reduce wort or beer absorption. Okay, remember when you're dropping those pellets in, they're going to be sucking up wort, sucking up beer. And you don't want that because you're trying to maximize volume out the backside with this particular question that you asked me. Another option is a hop aid anti-foam, which can help on the cold side. So if you're thinking you're going to be blowing all this beer and Kreuzen out of your tanks, there is actually a hop derived, I'm forgetting who it's from, but it's actually called Hop Aid, all one word, HOPAID. Google that and anti-foam and see what you come up with. You can get the manufacturer there. Sounds like some compelling stuff for people that are like, oh, I just don't like pouring junk into my beer. This is hop derived, so maybe you can feel good about it, but should really knock that Kreuzen level back, keep that ferment in the tank, potentially maximizing your yield coming out of your tank. Another option might be making sure that you're getting a good, solid cold store on your beer. The more haze you drop out, the more volume of clear beer you can pull. Also consider some brewing aids. I am a big fan of a couple of them, which are Brewers Clarex, for one, which is supposed to be something that will help on the haze side and the clarification side. And yeah. And it has some gluten reducing functions as well, if that's something that you're interested in. But they do sell it as a way of being able to move beer a little bit faster, not being able to being able to get a beer clearer faster. Filter aid as well, right? And then kind of goes without saying, but more gently hot beers are going to get you more volume. That hazy that you're dry hopping at 4 to 6 pounds per barrel, you're going to have some loss. But that light lager, boy, she's going to be full volume, right? So maybe measure that into your equation as well. But yeah, I think those are some high level ways of looking at that, and that's how I would approach it. Bandana Bush. Thanks for the question. And some guy, thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Appreciate the kind words. La Family Carrington on YouTube. Do you have any thoughts about adding ascorbic acid with the priming sugar? And I think that's vitamin C. That's what I'm doing, but without any evidence that it works. So we're talking about carbonating a beer on the cold side, or the tail end of fermentation. You're getting ready to package, and we're always looking to prevent oxidation in our beers, right? They can turn our beers dark, turn our beers stale, kill our hop flavor and aroma. What could be worse? Nothing. Well, here are the pros and cons of using vitamin C and or ascorbic acid for oxidation prevention. First of all, there is an initial antioxidant effect. Ascorbic acid can act as an antioxidant by reducing dissolved oxygen in the beer, which might initially help to limit oxidation. However, the effect can be temporary. It can lead to the formation of hydrogen peroxide. When ascorbic acid oxidizes, it can produce hydrogen peroxide, a compound that accelerates oxidative reactions in beer. This can lead to the very staling effects it is intended to prevent, like off flavors, color darkening, and reduced shelf life. Books like Technology, Brewing, and Malting by Kuhn suggest minimizing oxidation through more reliable means, such as your bread and butter, ladies and gentlemen. Double down, reimagine, rethink the ways in which you can clean, sanitize, and purge transfer better. Okay? Be crazy about it. Think about it all the time. Look up new techniques. Push the limits. You want to limit oxygen exposure during and after fermentation. You want to make sure you are purging vessels well with CO2 or nitrogen. Really, really dig down on your nuts and bolts. Make sure you're getting rid of any oxidizing sanitizers before moving beer from tank to tank. Get good fundamentals. Because listen, fundamentals, both fun and mental. Okay? What more could you ask for? I appreciate the question. Who was that again? Oh, that was La Family Carrington. That's what I would. That's the way I would go with it, man. I would ditch it. Me personally, I want to be adding as few things as possible. especially with something that may have the effect of doing the opposite of what I want it to do. In a chat full of Channel All-Stars. Oh, I started. in a chat room full of Channel All-Stars. One more has just popped in. Web down. What's good? Hey, Adam. Joining a bit late. Hope all is well. Got the new FV delivered to the brewery yesterday and is now sitting in place. Glycol lines and then start with cleaning and passivization. So I hooked up WebDan. Did I send that to you directly on Instagram? If you're not on the gram, baby, WebDan and I, we were sliding in the DMs. You know, I think I sent that to you in the DMs, right? I should actually put a link to that in the clip. I should put a link to that in the comments or in the thing. Did I post that, WebDan? Did that video go live already? Like the clip version of it? If it is, I need to get in there. Get in there. Next question is from Zoot on YouTube. Hi. Really appreciate your time to explain your process. No problem, man. What chemical are you using in the ultrasonic cleaner? Zoot was looking at one of the videos where I was probably going to clean a carbstone. And what I was doing when I was at Cartridge is I had an ultrasonic cleaner that would fit my carbstone in it. And I would rinse it out really good with water, the carbstone, and then push gas through it to get all that beer out. And then I would submerge it in my ultrasonic cleaner, and I would put that through caustic, acid, and then a no-rinse sanitizer, all for the recommended temperature ranges and time, concentration, temp, all that stuff. Per the chemicals I was using standard brewery caustic, non-foaming. If you did foaming, it would get wild in a hurry. But I would run caustic for 20 minutes, rinse well. And then I would go with citric nitric acid, just the acid that we are running, our standard CIP acid. Run that for 20, get that rinsed. And then I would shake that thing with, I think ideally you would shake that thing with paracetic and then push that through. And then when you're building your tank, when you're spinning your paracetic cycle on your bright tank, you can just build it out and then blow it out and everything like that. But that's what I was doing. So recommended time, temperature, calcium or chemical concentration for 20 minutes a piece. On the sanitizing side, gosh, I'd have to look back, but it'd probably only be 5 or 10 minutes on the paracetic. But yeah, that's how I was shaking it, back in the day when I was rocking the ultrasonic cleaner. So yeah, appreciate the question, Zoot. Got one coming up from Joel. All right, I got the water. I have the seltzer over here. We're gonna be low on. We were low on seltzer for a while, ladies and gents. Whoa, crisp. Let me see. Oh my goodness. People are funny. All right. Next question is from Joel on Instagram. I have a question about the carbing process with a carbstone. I've seen it multiple ways. Am I correct in my assumption that I can set my bright tank head pressure to the desired carbing pressure and then set the same pressure on my regulator plus the wetting pressure and crack open the valve, and the beer should carb until equilibrium hits? Yeah, that can do. Yes, you can do it like that. I'm not sure how long it will take you. It could take you longer, but it sounds like a nice gentle way of carving, and I am pro gentle ways of carving. So that's fine. Continuing though. I've also seen it done with putting head pressure on the tank and just setting the desired pressure on the regulator, and the beer will carb up until equilibrium is hit. You're discussing like head pressure carb. Also fine. Nice, gentle way. Can take considerably more time depending on that ratio of surface area to the rest of the size of the tank. I've also in the past personally, you said, or is there a different Adam Makes Beer approved way? Thanks. There's a few ways to do it, man. First of all, I do like gentle ways of carbonation because you're maintaining your foam. Those proteins that govern foam are a use it and lose it type scenario. So every time you make a beer foam up, the quality of that foam stand later in the glass is diminished. All right. So we want to be as gentle as possible when we move those beers around. I've seen kind of the grip it and rip it, the what is it? The blast and bleed kind of thing where you're gunning CO2 through a carb stone at 35 psi, and you have the vent arm bleeding, and so you're kind of like you have it at 15 psi, which is usually the max for the tank, and so you're pumping gas through and you're bleeding it out the top. You can get foaming, it can come up through, then you have to stop and let it chill. That is a quick way to blow that gas up really quickly. You could potentially be degrading foam during doing that. But lots of folks do that. I've done it in the past. I've also done, so say I have 1.8 volumes of CO2 in a beer, and that means that I'm at like 5 psi is the equilibrium for that. I've had a beer transferred over. It's in my tank. The carb limit of where it is matches the pressure of the tank, so it's like 5. I've done what you're saying with the, because it's like at 32 degrees or 0, whatever, 0 Celsius. That, for me, I wanted it to go to 10, and I knew my wetting pressure was 5. So, I would set it to 15, knowing that it would only get the tank up to 10. And I would do a real small crack, and I could just hear that backflow preventer like buzzing. And by the time I got it in the morning, it was all the way up where I needed to be more times than not. And that's kind of a gentle way to do it too. We talked about some really aggressive ways, some really fast ways of doing it. Then also some slower ways. If you have the time to do head pressure carb, that's great. Maybe you might be able to get a little nicer foam out of that. But yeah, those are all valid options. I would prefer to choose options that are more gentler than just the rip and grip and blast out the side. But yeah, that's just me. That's just me, Joel. Appreciate the question, man. Okay. This is Lucas on Instagram. Hey, Adam, when sparging, what is the flow rate you shoot for? How many gallons per minute do you transfer from your mash tun to the boil kettle? Thanks. Love the channel. I'm going to pull up this other document because, like I said, I was doing my research. And this is all based off of Kuhn's and Narza stuff. So I busted out the textbooks today, kids. So stick with me because these numbers might be a little rough, but you're gonna have a simple answer toward the end. But we're gonna break it all the way down just so you know the terms in which this is thought of in. Okay, so your initial runoff rate, which a lot of times should be slower. Okay, your initial runoff rate, recommendation rate they list it as 0.008 barrels per minute per square foot of lauter ton surface area, or 1 liter per minute per square meter. That means nothing to anyone. But how about this? This translates to about a half of a barrel per hour per square foot. Hey, maybe that still doesn't mean anything to you. But stick with me. The main lauter rate, so when you're kind of running slower to kind of set that bed, maybe get it to finally clean up a little bit more, maybe get that as clear as you can heading over. After the initial runoff, the main lauter rate can increase up to 0.016 or 0.024 barrels per minute per square foot of lauter ton surface area. This translates to approximately 1 to 1.5 barrels per hour per square foot, or 2 to 3 liters per minute per square foot per square meter. I always have this one person that can never pass up the opportunity to say, you know, it's easier in metric. You don't say. But let's get down to brass tacks, folks. The total lautering time for most batches, German practices suggest lautering should be complete in 1 to 1.5 hours, depending on batch size and equipment. So what I've done when I was brewing on a 15-barrel system and I was collecting 18 barrels, into the kettle, I would divvy that up. I would take, so let's just say, what would be the easiest math here? Oh man, what did I have to do? When I was at Cartridge, I was doing 18 barrels in 90 minutes, 18 divided by 90. So is that, no, it wasn't oh man, I'm not smart. But anyways, I would set like a 5-minute timer. I would track it. You go back and watch my old brew days. You'll see me actually timing that out. Okay. And I would watch, I would watch my sight glass on the side of my tank, and I would set timers to track my flow rate there. So yeah. In general, you're looking at 1 to 1.5 hours. Sometimes I feel like if you're running off closer to an hour, maybe sometimes you can be pushing that mash bed or that lauter bed and maybe not be getting as much efficiency out of it as you could. But yeah, I think typically an hour and a half is what I've usually shot for, 90 minutes to be able to run that through. So I gave you the hard data, but in general, shoot for about 90 minutes. What's going on over here? All right. Let's see. Twin Adam, you do not have to create a channel. You might have to have a YouTube sign in to ask a question. So what was the question? What was the question you had for me? I know what Twin Joe's question was. Let's see. I do have a couple of questions coming in off to the side. Adam, give us your best impression. My best impression of what? Webdan? My best impression of what? Let's see. I had a couple of questions. Oh, yes. This question, a question from Twin Adam. Can you please explain the rules of the Mike Allstock game? The Mike Allstock game originated in the early 2000s when some young men were attending Franciscan University. Football fans, friends to the end. And one evening, bored, nothing to do, should be studying, in the common room, I used to take the ball and then throw it to Twin Adam, and I would always throw it to where he would have to like jump up and like expose his ribs to make the catch. and then I would just charge after him and tackle him and spear him in the ribs. And we would play that over and over again. And I call it the Mike Allstott game. If you don't know who Mike Allstott is, Google him. He has some great highlights. But we played Mike Allstott all the time. Those are the rules. The rules are we play the game when I want to play it. And I'm always going to throw you a bad pass and put you in a position where I can potentially injure you. Those are the rules of Mike Allstott. Next question comes from Joel on Instagram. I've got through two brew days on my new setup, and each time my OG has been 10 points off. Weird. I've used the work grant each time, and I've taken multiple samples through sparging and have not let anything lower than 10-10 through. What is the speed at which I should Vorloff, lauter, and sparge? I'm pumping during lauter since I do not have enough vertical height to allow gravity to push the wort from the mash tun to the kettle. Any suggestions? So let's dig in. There are several factors that can lead to reduced mash efficiency for you in your brew house, right? Possibilities. And we're going to jump into some of these because he has a situation where we're using a new brew house. And so we see that that's the big variable, right? That's the big variable. But possibilities that can lead to reduced mash efficiency quickly. Poor crush, inadequate mash mixing, incorrect mash temperature and pH, short mash time, poor lauter technique, sparge water temperature and volume, inaccurate equipment calibration, grain quality and freshness, extreme water quality issues. All right. So, yeah, that's kind of the rundown. That's kind of the rundown. Now let's talk about some things that might apply directly to your situation. This poor crush quality, it's not one that we're going to bring it up and we're going to talk about it. If the malt is not milled properly, the starches in the grain may not be sufficiently exposed for enzymatic conversion, leading to lower extract yield. Okay, that makes sense to everybody. But the variable here is there is a new brew house. There is a new lauter screen or false bottom that he is Vorloffing through and then lautering through. And so what was a crush that was good for the previous brew house may not be good for this current brew house. Okay, so let's examine that as a possibility. You could also have a situation where we do have an inadequate mash mixing. That's a tough one for me to say. The poor mash mixing can result in uneven temperature and enzyme distribution, causing incomplete starch conversion. Techs recommend through mash mixing to ensure even heat and enzyme distribution, which improves the breakdown of starches into fermentable sugar. This could be a thing with a new system as well, right? Maybe that mash mixer, if you have a new mash mixing rig, a new hydrator, maybe you're not actually getting your mash appropriately mixed. I'm not sure with your situation, but maybe. Dealing with a new system, we could be looking at something on the incorrect mash temperature and pH side. Probably not as much the pH side. But wanting to make sure that you are wanting to make sure that all of your temperature probes, outputs, and everything like that are actually calibrated to make sure you're hitting the right temperatures, the temperatures that you believe that you are, right? Because you could have some variation there. So make sure all of your measurement devices are calibrated. Short mash time thing, I don't think is probably your situation. We can get into, struggling with lauter technique. And again, we're back to equipment and what might be some differences in your false bottom or whatnot. If you do have a standard runoff time between, kind of an hour, hour 15, hour 30, if you're not going up to an hour 30, math that thing out and stretch it out, extend it a little bit. Be really cognizant of what that mash bed or lauter bed looks like when you're done running off. See if you have potentially any channeling going on, because if there is an issue with the differences in your mash screens between or lauter screens between the two vessels, the two different systems you've used, you could have a situation where you're getting channeling. And so if you have a kind of a leaning bed or one, go ahead and really good flashlight all around the corner. See if you're doing anything like that. When you're graining out, see if you have dry spots, clumpier spots than others, thicker spots than others. And I'm assuming you probably have a lauter rake in there, maybe not. If you do, maybe just like a half rotation very slowly, maybe halfway through your lauter, 1 or 2 times. If it doesn't kick up too much debris in your runoff, sometimes I like just that half turn, so you've actually stirred the whole bed just a little bit. And sometimes that can cut it up and make sure you're getting everything flowing all the way through. That might help out. Again, double checking your temperatures, making sure everything is good there, all your calibrations. That's how I would chase it down. Me personally, I mean, the big thing here is that the variable is a different system. You haven't had this problem with the other system. So maybe there needs to be some process changes or grain handling differences that you need to do as far as the crush for this particular lauter ton. So that's kind of my gut on it. And yeah, I hope that helps you out. Yeah, Webdan, I have not brewed NA beer. There are a lot of challenges, and as you mentioned, not having proper pasteurization equipment is a big one, man. Yeah, no, I haven't, but I would be interested. I would love to do a behind the scenes with somebody that's actually willing to talk about how they do NA beer, because a lot of people have secrets, especially around NA. All right. Richard on Instagram. Adam, I'm really into specialty beers and I want to try to make some beer with chocolate flavors, gingerbread, or something like that. Do you have any suggestions on how to know the ratio of spice to liters? First of all, if you have dry spicing options, I would look up, for instance, I'm a really big fan of Brewing Classic Styles, and they have some spice beers in here, and they have some ratios there. You might need to do some conversions to get grams per liter or something like that. But they have some suggestions for spices for use on the hot side. I would check that out and then kind of scale that up. But when we're talking about spices, I would always look at it as 2 ways. You have the opportunity to, and chocolate would fit the bill because you can also do the lowest fat cocoa powder you can go with in the kettle, or cocoa nibs or something like that. But you can get flavor infusion on the hot side. Bag things up if they're larger particulate so you don't get it stuck in your heat exchanger. I have seen plenty of people with no issue go with cocoa powder straight in, powdered spices straight in. But you can get hot side flavor, but know that they may be reduced on the back end post fermentation. So what you want to do is get that beer clarified, cold, and ready to go into your bright tank and start tasting and smelling that beer, and benchtop it with some nice, high quality, TTB approved natural extracts of those elements that you used on the hot side, and do some benchtop testing into 1 liter and see how many grams you need to dose, or milliliters you need to dose in order to get those flavors into the range you want. So kind of start with a reasonable baseline in the kettle. Don't go too far overboard, but then actually come back with a nice high quality natural extract just to hit with a little smack at the back end in order to prop up and round out those specialty aromatics that you want to be including in your beer. As always, I suggest getting multiple samples from people, finding out something that you really like through benchtop testing, and then scaling that up into the finished beer. Appreciate the question, Richard. All right. Next question is from Joel on Instagram. I have a question about water to grain ratio. I've mostly brewed my batches at 1.25 quarts per pound and have consistently been low on starting gravity. Would bumping it up to 1.5 quarts per pound help with ensuring the starting volume has been mixed thoroughly through the grain with Vorlaufen? I'm not against it. I would give it a shot and see how it goes. I will say sometimes I feel like I forget where I heard this, but I think a buddy of mine was saying that sometimes different systems, like German systems, might particularly be tailored for 1.25 quarts per pound, or was it 1.5 quarts per pound? But of course, they're going to be using liters, so don't get me started. But yeah, there might be different lauter ton dimensions that are, and mash tun dimensions that are better for certain grist to water ratios. So check that out. It's a really easy tweak. If you are tracking things on the water chemistry side, you're going to want to make sure to make your adjustments there with having more water per grain, and making sure that you're factoring in temperature as well, because you could be hitting a higher mash temperature when you increase the volume of water that you're using. Just some things to think about. But I say chase it and see if that's one of the things that might be able to tweak an issue that you're having on the efficiency side. Appreciate the question, Joel. Dancing Squirrel Brewing, Channel All-Star. Howdy. I was just thinking the other day that I'm sure we would enjoy watching you do a homebrew day. When's the last time you homebrewed, or will you homebrew again? It's a good question, man. In my brain, I'm such a control freak now. The advantage that most pros have on most home systems, is that it's equipment made for making beer. Now, some of you are using some Cadillacs out there. Boy, you guys have some wild systems these days. But for me to enjoy it, I don't know. I have to be able to control so many process points and what is the right way in my mind, that I might struggle without having to have really expensive brewing equipment. Anyways, yeah, it's not, home brewing isn't in the cards for me right now. I don't even have gear anymore. So yeah, but yeah, let me think on that, man. Maybe we can put something together. Maybe we could do a club thing, or this, that, or the other. Might be cool. Appreciate you bouncing in here tonight, Dancing Squirrel. Hopefully you're doing well. Let's see here. Next question is from Dave on Instagram. Adam, we got everything figured out for the bright tanks we were having an earlier conversation. I got a question for you. Love your videos, by the way. When we are done cleaning our kegs with our keg washer, it typically fills the keg with CO2 up to a certain PSI at the very end of the cleaning cycle. What PSI is the keg needed to be in order to fill it and not overcarbonate the beer that we're filling it with? Continuing, the question continues. What PSI do you normally fill the fermenter and or bright tank in order to transfer the beer into the keg? The reason I asked is I've seen somebody use 20 to 25 PSI going into a keg that already had 12 PSI in order to get the pressure high enough for the transfer. The beer tastes a lot different when they use this method, and it seems over-carbed. Dave, man. So yeah, a lot of times you will see kegs pressurized up to, and it's probably a preset on your keg washer. It's going to purge that keg and then pressurize it. And if you're filling kegs by hand, if that pressure is higher, you can just turn it down. You can just kind of knock that preset down or blow a little pressure off before filling. Now, I've used, if you look at the keg filling tutorial that I have, that's just using a manual rig. If you have your coupler, that'll have the little valve on top, the little valve on the gas side. You can engage that, and you can blow off some pressure off of it, but you do not want to be taking any tank. So if you're telling me that somebody has 20 to 25 PSI on that bright tank or pushing it into kegs, I have a feeling it's a standard bright tank, man. And if that's a standard 1 bar or 15 PSI rated tank, that's dangerous as hell, man. I hope that's not the case. I hope I'm not understanding, and I'm trying not to sound like sound mocking or anything like that, or make it sound like too big of a deal, but that's a big deal, man. If I'm understanding it correctly, if you have a rated 15 PSI tank and you're putting 25 PSI on that tank in order to push beer into kegs, that's wild, and you should not be doing it. That's dangerous, and somebody could get hurt or die. That said, really what you're doing is when you're moving liquid from one vessel into the other, you only need the pressure on the receiving vessel to be slightly lower than what the bright tank is at, or the supply vessel, right? And because the head pressure is higher, these pressures might be a little bit different. But, a lot of times when I have a beer at 32 degrees or 0 Fahrenheit, and I have it at, stabilized at a 10 PSI in the tank, that I have my full carb right there. I've gone and I'll put gas on that fermenter at 15 PSI because I'm filling multiple tanks at once, and it'll kind of chase it down. But anyways, you just have to have it up a little bit higher. So, you could actually preset that keg a little bit lower. You don't want a situation when you're opening up those valves on the coupler where you see beer pushing backwards. You don't want that. You don't want to see CO2 coming out of the keg. You want to see that filling in. But, like I said, when you engage that coupler, the blow off, the vent on it, you can blow that down a little bit and then crack your top valve and make sure you have beer coming the right way. Yeah, that shouldn't be the issue. You should have a lot less pressure on your bright, no more than 15 for super majority of tanks out there. And then just bleed that pressure down, and you might be able to change that preset. You know what I mean? If you want that, if you only want to pressurize up to 12, that might be a preset that you can adjust on your keg. And yeah, but I would dig into that keg washer, that you have, and see how pressurized those kegs are coming out. But yeah, if that beer was overcarbonated, part of it might have been that it was getting, it had way too much pressure in the tank of origin. So yeah. Yeah, Andrew, and hopefully I wasn't making. Hopefully, when I was talking before, about brewing at home, hopefully it didn't sound like a knock on anything, but like I don't know, I can't. My brain won't. My brain won't let me make beer, and I don't think I would enjoy it. You know what I mean? It's tough. It's tough, and it's not like a judgmental way about different things. Anyways, I'm probably apologizing for something I don't need to apologize for. Yeah. Next question. Well, let's see. Hold on here. What is this possibly the case? Brookside Brewing, new channel member. Next question comes from you, man. Hello, Adam. I hope you are well. With the news from last week, I have a question for you. The owners of the brewery I work at are opening a third restaurant. They informed me that they expect me to fill the 12 taps at the brewery and an additional 12 taps at their other spots. Here's the rub. I have a 5-barrel brew house and only 25 barrels of fermentation space, 3 5-barrel fermenters and 1 10-barrel. Do you think that is even possible without quality suffering? I don't think I can. How do I have that conversation? And then I asked for some follow-up stuff about what he typically brews and tank residency time. And he said, typically, ales are in the tank for 14 to 16 days and about 30s for lagers if we can. We've been experimenting with Kvike strains to turn ales faster, but still in the early stages of the experiment. Probably 40% of the beers that they turn are lager. We play a lot of tank Tetris, moving beers around and reusing yeast. So he wants my take on this. So here's my take on this, and maybe it's not all good news, okay? But here's the math that I did. If you go to making all ales, what you can do is produce about 650 barrels of beer per year, because you can make 25 barrels every 2 weeks. Multiply that by 26, which will give you your 52 weeks. And there's your 650 barrels. And that's making no lagers. So the first question is that enough beer volume for those places, for the number of places that they're looking at pouring for? If so, they'll probably be looking at a situation where having 12 beers at all the places is probably going to be tricky. I think it's going to be too tough, because you and I both know that you're going to have a few standards that create, you're going to have 4 beers that's 80% of the volume of what you pour, right? So pretty darn close. So, you're going to have some beers that are big movers and then others that kind of sit around a little bit. Perhaps you can dose kegs in order to make different beers, because I think you're going to have a hard enough time keeping up with volume for these things, and especially with all the variations. So one thing is you can do spike kegs, one-off kegs to fill up tap handles. I don't know if that's the way you want to do it. I mean, it doesn't sound exciting to me. It's kind of like a festival approach. Like, well, we got this beer, let's throw something in it. Let's throw it in a keg, right? I don't know. It can work for something really short term, but I personally, it probably isn't. You probably wouldn't be excited about that. Yeah. I know plenty of places that do things like this. Maybe you can dose up kegs to make different beers. I know places that have 7 variations of the same beer on tap. Doesn't sound compelling to me from a creative standpoint. You know what I mean? But I guess you do what you got to do to get things going. but you could. And so here, I think you're gonna have some open taps, man. I think you could potentially use some of the unused tap space for draft cocktails. I know we've done it at some places, and it's been a good business move. I know Sonder is running, like their margarita cocktails that work well through the tap. And you can fill up that space. The plus side is it's a quick service way of doing that. You can free your bartenders up to serve more drinks faster. You never know. A lot of folks are doing stuff like that. But it might be a tough sell, man. And I wish I had good news for you and a quick solution on it. Maybe the Kvike thing will help. But one thing to look out with the Kvike stuff, I know you can burn beers faster with that. But just because you can, it doesn't mean that the beer is as good at 7 days when you can potentially put it on tap as opposed to, 14 to 20 days, But anyways, that's my take. So I think, how do you have that conversation? I've been pissed about conversations like that sometimes when I have somebody ask me something that I think is to do something that I think is unreasonable. But I have to have a calm bullet point list of what you can do and why, and show them this is what you can do, show them the math, and then see what can be tricky about it, and then offer solutions and have a conversation. Don't come empty-handed. Try to help them fix the problem, right? So just from a job standpoint, career standpoint, that's my approach on it. Go in, avoid getting angry about something or shooting your mouth off about something. Speak simply, speak the truth, and try to make a productive conversation, right? So, yeah, that's my take. And once again, Brookside Brews, new channel member. Appreciate the support. Next question comes from Daryl on Instagram. I would like to know, speaking of which, this was funny. So if you're listening to this all in order, I would like to know more about adding adjunct to a one-off keg. Well, Daryl, I'm glad you asked, man. Let's get it. There was a beer that I did when I was back when I was listening to a bunch of Tom Waits, and he had which one was it? It was off of Heart Attack and Vine, Mr. Siegel, and he had a song called Mr. Siegel, and in that he talked about it. He buttons up his burgundy shirt or whatever. And I had this wheat wine, this big strong wheat beer. It was like 90. It was like 90. I almost said 90%. It was like 9% or something. Just a big pale, strong wheat beer, kind of barley wine-esque a little bit. And I had some beautiful cherry concentrate from someplace up in Michigan. I was brewing in Michigan at the time, Cherryland, USA. And so I'm like, I'm gonna blow down the pressure on this keg, pour this cherry concentrate in here, and then rack a full half barrel on top of this, right? Mixing it and whatnot. So I did that. I served it the next day. I kept it cold, served it the next day at a festival. Called that beer Burgundy Shirt because it poured this nice dark, red burgundy from the original like pale beer that it originally was. And sometimes in certain beers, it had some nice acidity, some big bright fruit. There was definitely sweetness in it as well. And it was just one of those things that worked really well. And so Burgundy Shirt, that's something that I think about because it was one of the first spiked kegs that I had done. So you can take your puree, your concentrate, whatever adjunct you want to be putting in. And I would recommend you can pull a spear if you need to, but pulling a spear is a pain in the butt. So I always like to build out some sort of rig on the top of a Sankey connector, A lot of times you can get one that'll go from like beer nut to 1.5" valve or 1.5" triclover, and then put like a reducer on that's 1.5" up to 2 inches. So you kind of have like a little funnel for yourself. And you can sanitize all that, attach that, blow down the pressure on the keg, and then pour your adjunct in through that, and then rack beer on top of that. So you still have kind of a closed system. You're not busting it all the way open. But what I always did was when I would add a liquid adjunct to a keg like that, I would repurge it, and I would do it through the beer out portion, because remember, the beer that's coming out of a keg is coming out of the bottom of it. And so that's effectively purging through the bottom of the keg. Right. So purge to the bottom, maybe repressurize the keg a little bit, shut it down, and then drop, and then push your beer in. So yeah, that's how I dosed up kegs. Make sure to stay clean and sanitary, clean, sanitary keg. Get that adjunct in there if it's in the liquid form by pouring it through kind of a Frankenstein keg rig. You could pull the spear, but that sounds like a pain. Repurge, pressurize, and get that beer transferred in on top of it. Jamie Tripp, what's good, brother? Good to see you in the chat. But Daryl, that is that. Well, ladies and gents, that is going to be it for the evening. I do want to remind you, stick to the YouTube channel. Somebody posted, and I felt bad about it, and it's nothing to feel bad about. But and they weren't meaning to be mean or anything. They were complimenting the new recipe creation workshop, recipe writing workshop. And he said that I lost him for a while with all the podcast clips as videos. We're going to be fixing that as we go, and there's going to be more content beyond just recycled podcast clips. But yeah, to everybody who has been supporting me by listening and sharing, much appreciated. To everybody that's been supporting me financially, really appreciate it. Again, my focus is now going full-time at content creation and consultation. So support me in any way you can. If it works doing the $2.99 a month as a channel membership, bless your hearts. But if it's a struggle out there for you right now, don't push yourself. I just appreciate you watching, liking, and sharing those videos. So stick to my Instagram. You're going to see more stuff coming out, Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. You're going to see more stuff coming out. And yeah, as always, I appreciate you all. Let's see. Our brew house enjoyed your recipe vids. Never too late to learn more. That's the truth, brother. I'm always trying to learn more, Jamie. Shoot. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. But to all you at home, good to see you. And take care. Be good to your people. And I will catch you next time. Have a good night.